Hello, and welcome to Unschool Graphic Design. This is Shreya Roy, and I'm the course instructor and the senior graphic design coach for this course. Feel free to talk to me if you have any question regarding graphic design. Now, the first question that we have, what is graphic design? Let's see what the internet says. I got this definition from Google that graphic design is a process of visual communication and problem solving through the use of typography, photography, iconography, and illustration. The field is considered a subset of visual communication and communication design, but sometimes the term graphic design is used synonymously. Now, this is a fair definition of graphic design. I would like to elaborate it in the simplest way possible. Let's just take things very easy. We have graphic and design. The graphic part of graphic design is visual. There are certain words which are associated with graphic design such as art, expression, and imagination. This graphic part of graphic design has a lot of mediums in it, coming from drawing, lettering, painting, and so on. Now, this graphic part has a lot of important elements in it. Let's have a look on them. These are line, shape, form, color, texture, focus, mass and volume, space, and typography. This graphic part of graphic design determines the structure and the overall look and feel of your final design. So it's really important to identify and choose certain graphic design elements in order to get into the design process, because these are the building blocks. So if you just don't choose the elements that's going to create your building, so you won't be able to create good graphics. Now, another word we have is design. Design is problem solving, thinking, and brainstorming. Design determines the functionality of the certain creation that has been created by using the visual elements of graphic design. Design is more about how it works, but the graphic part is more about how it looks like. There's a difference between these two words. Now, this design has certain principles in it. Let's have a look on them. These are pattern, contrast, emphasis, balance, scale, harmony, rhythm, movement, unity, and variety. These are the 10 principles of design that comes under the theory. Now, when these two concepts, graphic and design, come together, we call it graphic design. Now, as you know the meaning of the words, it's important to understand that graphic design is not only about making things look good. As I said, there are two words, graphic and design. So if you are only making the design look good, that will only fulfill the purpose of the graphic part, not of the design part. There is always a purpose behind your design. You need to figure that out first before getting into the design process. A good graphic design should satisfy certain conditions. The design should be meaningful. It should be problem solving, and third, it should look good and attractive. These are the few conditions that a good graphic design should satisfy. Before you jump into the canvas and start designing, it's important to understand and figure out the goal and expectation of that particular design, so that you will be designing according to that and will achieve the goal. The most important purpose of graphic design is communicating through visuals. Every single graphic design element conveys a certain message. So it's really important to choose certain graphic design elements in order to fulfill the design requirement and also apply the design principles on them. At the end of your project, your design should be enough to communicate with the viewer. You shouldn't go and tell the audience what my design is all about. Your design must have the capacity to communicate directly to the user, because you already got a lot of visual elements. Those will help you to make them understand what's the message your design wants to convey. So it's really essential to choose certain graphic elements and identify which principle is right for you. So I hope that you got a decent idea of what graphic design is all about. Design is really broad and has so much information in it. Graphic design has become one of the most trending careers in this era. Now, I cordially welcome each and one of you to be on this platform. You're gonna get such valuable information regarding graphic design over here. Thank you so much for signing up with us. Come and learn with me.
So our next important graphic design element is called shape. If you look around yourself, everything is ultimately a shape. Shape is one of the most important graphic design elements that helps to add interest in your piece of graphic. In graphic design, shape can be used as a decoration or in a symbolic manner. It also can be used as a single graphic, for example, logos. In general, shape is the external form, contours, or outline of something. In graphic design, shapes have two dimensions, measured by height and weight. Shapes are defined by boundaries, such as line, color, or it can be also defined by negative space. Now there are two types of shapes in design, geometric shape and organic shape. Geometric shapes are those shapes which can be drawn by using a ruler or compass or any geometric devices. Whether it's simple or complex, this produces a feeling of more control and order. It gives a feeling of formal elements. Organic shapes can be drawn freehand. These shapes can be found in nature. Whether that's simple or complex, this produces a feeling of natural. Geometric shapes are more likely to be created by human because it needs a lot of measurement and symmetry. The house that you're in is created by a lot of geometrical shapes. The walls, the doors, the windows, the floors, everything you see is either square or rectangle. These are created by human. These shapes cannot be found in nature. On the other hand, organic shapes are more likely to be found in nature. For example, the shape of a tree, a flower, the shape of an insect, everything is organic shapes. These are not created by geometrical shapes, and these are not created by human. That's the reason why these can be drawn freehand. It doesn't need a lot of measurement and perfect symmetry and all that things. Every single shape conveys a certain message in graphic design, so it's important to select shapes and arrange them in the right way where it conveys the right message to the user. Now to talk about the geometrical shapes, we have three big major shapes that everyone knows. These are circle, triangle, and rectangle. Circles. As an expression of a complete retention and having no endpoints, circles are often used to convey a sense of completion, wholeness, and the eternal. Next, triangles. Triangles often signify the directional movement, most often in cardinal directions. A triangle with a flat baseline and two equal sides feels balanced and offers a sense of an apex like a mountain, or may be used to signify a hierarchy. And the last one is rectangles. Rectangles are really interesting. If you look around, you are completely surrounded by rectangles. Your phone, your laptop, your wall, windows, everything is a rectangle. Rectangles are everywhere in human designs. Now these geometrical shapes make a contrast with the organic shapes. The geometrical shaped triangle may look like a mountain, but if you go to the nature, you won't be able to find a perfect triangle in the nature. Because in nature, everything is an organic shapes and that cannot be designed by human. Now, in graphic design, the geometrical shapes and organic shapes can be used separately or can be combined in such a way that creates a visual interest in the graphic design. It's important to understand and balance the shape positions in a particular graphic design. Shapes can be used orderly or can be used randomly. In formal design, shapes are more likely to be placed orderly that looks clean and controlled. In decorative designs, shape can be used randomly. For example, if you're designing a card for a birthday, you can use various shapes and place that randomly to give it a feel of joy. In graphic design, the most important usage of shapes are in logo creation. Every single logo is created by a shape, whether that's a geometrical shape or organic shape, but it's a shape. Let's have a look on these most famous logos. Most of them are created by geometrical shapes. However, there are logos created by organic shapes, but those organic shapes are created by geometrical shapes. In logo creation process, it's really important to create the logos which are geometrically balanced and symmetrically perfect. Now these logos can be created by using geometrical shapes or organic shapes, but those need to be properly balanced. Here are a few examples of shapes that creates a visual interest in graphic design. It doesn't necessarily need to have much complexity in it. Shapes can easily create an interest in your graphic design if it's properly balanced and aligned. Nowadays, shapes are extensively used in social media posts. The placement of your shapes says a lot about your design, so it's important to position your shape in the right way. So I hope you got the decent idea of shape and how significant this is in graphic design. Please continue the lesson with the next video.
In this section, we're going to be talking about the elements of graphic design in detail and how important they are practically. So the first graphic design element that we have is line. Now it might sound a little common to talk about, but in graphic design, line plays a significant role and it's so important to know the theory of it. So in graphics, a line can be described as a single point that continues for a distance or as the connection between 2 points. The purpose of a line in graphics is to help the artist or the designer to communicate the viewers what it is they are supposed to be seeing or taking a notice of. There are so many types of lines that conveys the message to the user. For example, look at this picture. A line can be thick, thin, dashed, dotted, dark, light. It has so many types of it, and every single line conveys a different message. Now it's important to understand the right type of line that you should choose for your design. Primarily, there are two types of lines: straight line and curved line. Straight lines are really easy to understand. It has open ends. That means if I drew a few straight lines, the ends will never meet with each other. But in case of curved lines, it may connect the ends or it may not connect the ends. Curved lines also have a lot of types in it. A circle is a curved line because the ends meets with each other, so it's definitely not a straight line and it doesn't have an open end in it. Also, zigzags and waves can be called as curved lines even though the two ends do not connect with each other. So it has several varieties in curved lines and straight lines. When I'm talking about dashed lines or dotted lines, these types can be applied to a straight line or a curved line or a circle, or it can be applied to any line. This is called the rhythm. Next important thing is the direction. The direction of line also helps to convey messages to the user. I'm going to show you a few examples how line has been used in these designs and how impactful this is. If you look carefully, you will understand design is not possible without lines. Why? Because the shapes you see are made of lines. It doesn't matter whether it's a straight line or curved line. If you look at the letter A from the alphabet, it has 3 straight lines in it. If you look at O, it has a closed end that's called a curved line. So everything you see, you will probably find line is the basic element, and based on that everything is designed. Now the application of line is really important. Line has been extensively used in infographics. Look at this image. If you are sketching someone, if you are portraying an image, basically what you are doing, you are just drawing the lines, and that is giving you a final output of a complete image. In business or formal designs, we generally use the straight lines to make it look more prominent and custom. But in case of other creative designs, you can use curved lines. Just play around with lines and you're going to explore a lot in graphic design. There is also something interesting called line art. It has nothing but lines. The type, the structure, the rhythm, and the direction of the line determine what kind of message the line would give to the viewer. A very bold line can convey a message of aggressiveness, highlighting, and sometimes a bold line can convey a message of rudeness. Line also helps you to crop an image and give it a margin. Here are a few examples of line art. These are completely based on lines, like their weight, their direction, the type, their structure, their rhythm, and how you place them. The distance between the lines are also important. Hence, in graphic design, all you have to start with drawing a line. I hope you got a decent idea about line, and it shouldn't be underestimated in graphic design at any cost because this is the basic and it's one of the building blocks of your final output. So line is important. In this chapter, you will learn all about color theory and why this is so important in graphic design. However, color plays a vital role in graphic design and is so essential to know the theory of it. The color theory is really broad and has so much information in it, so I've divided the color theory into 4 parts. In the first part, we have fundamentals or basic of color theory. In the second part, we have color properties or the attributes. In the third part, we have color group or color schemes. And in the fourth and the last but not the least, we have color psychology. Let's get started with the fundamental of color theory. Now, I believe that all of you have already some knowledge about the color classification. We have already read the primary colors, secondary colors back in school, so it will be easier for you to understand what I'm saying right now. So we have 3 sets of colors. These are primary colors, secondary colors, and tertiary colors. Primary colors are the 3 colors we need to make all other colors. They are red, blue, and yellow. So basically, primary colors cannot be created by mixing 2 other colors. These 3 colors have one single hue in it. For example, red cannot be created by mixing any other two color. But if you see this orange, it has been created by mixing red and yellow. Now don't be confused with the term RGB. Oftentimes people think that RGB are the set of colors that is called the primary colors. But remember, when you're saying red, green and blue, we have green in it, and green is created by mixing blue and yellow. So definitely green is not a primary color. We will talk about the RGB theory later in this video. Next we have secondary colors. Secondary colors have been created by mixing two primary colors. So we have got orange, green and purple. Orange has been created by mixing red and yellow. Green has been created by mixing blue and yellow. Purple has been created by mixing red and blue. We're just adding one more layer to the primary colors that creates the secondary colors. Next we have tertiary colors. Tertiary colors are taking secondary colors one step further. They are two named colors such as red purple, red orange, yellow green, etc. So tertiary colors have been created by mixing all the secondary colors. It has been created in the same way. Tertiary color doesn't necessarily need to have a one single name of it. Just because it has so many shades on it, it's really difficult to find out the shade and its name. These colors can be also defined as two named colors. Just like I said before, red purple, red orange, yellow green, etc. When we put everything together, it forms the color wheel. Color wheel has all three set of colors, primary, secondary and tertiary color in it. Color wheel is the source of every single color. We can create any color that has existed in this world by mixing multiple colors from the color wheel. So it's really essential to understand the color wheel and how it is formed. You can also create a color wheel by your own. First we have to pick the primary colors as shown in this picture. Next you can add the secondary colors next to the primary colors, and similarly you can add the set of tertiary colors to complete the color wheel. Moving to the next concept, we will talk about the additive and subtractive color. Now oftentimes people get confused with the term RGB and RYB, and a lot of people think that RGB are the primary colors, which is not true, or it can be partially true but not exactly. Now let me clear this out the concept. We have two types of color system in design. A, additive color system, and B, subtractive color system. But here in this color system, RGB has been considered as primary colors. And I'll tell you why. Because these colors are not opaque. These colors are light colors which you can't touch or feel. Now I repeat again that don't be confused with the term when someone says RGB are the set of primary colors. So in additive color system, we are only talking about light colors. We are talking about red light, green light, and blue light. When we mix all lights together, we get the white light, which is the source. And if we mix the two of them, we get another set of colors. If we mix the red light and green light, we get yellow. Green and blue lights create shine, and red and blue light creates magenta. This is how the additive color system works. Don't be confused with RGB. These are primary colors, but these are light colors. You are not able to use them on any platform. For example, if you're painting something, you are not able to use additive colors on your paper. You can also experiment on this if you want. You can mix the green light and red light together, and you'll be able to see a yellow light that has been formed by mixing red and green. So it's pretty much like color science. If you are able to understand the entire color theory, you'll be probably covering 70% of graphic design, because design is also a science. So back to the topic, additive color system or the light color system is used in computer monitors, television sets and theater. These colors are not touchable and cannot be applied to anywhere because this is a color system, not the color itself. So the primary light colors are red, green and blue, which is RGB. These are called the additive colors. Another one we have subtractive color system. In this color system, one color gets subtracted from another one. It also has a primary set of colors. You can see we have shine, magenta and yellow. And if we mix all of them together, we get the black color, which is the source. And this time, this is not the set of light colors. These are the colors of pigments. Additive colors are all about light colors and subtractive colors are all about pigments. These colors are touchable and visually representable. This type of color model is used in print industry because we use these set of colors to print something out. which is not possible in additive color system, because those are the light colors which we cannot touch, which we cannot feel. But in subtractive color system, these are all about pigments. It can be ink, it can be pastels, it can be any color which you can touch, you can feel. It's not digitalized, you can feel it with your organs. So subtractive color system has three primary colors in it: magenta, shine, and yellow. All of these three subtractive colors are creating additive colors. Now subtractive colors are not creating additive light colors. Subtractive colors are creating additive pigment colors, which is red, blue, and green. Additive and subtractive color system have been used extensively in different industries for printing purpose, for computer, monitor, television, theater, movies. So it's really important to understand the different type of color systems and not to get confused with the primary, secondary, and tertiary color. So I hope you got the decent idea of fundamentals of color theory. In the next section, we have the attributes of color theory. In this video, I'm going to be discussing about space as a graphic design element and how significant this is in graphic design. In general, space refers to the area within, around, above, or below any object or objects. But in design, space creates the visual sense and dynamic of a certain composition. Space can be used to both separate and connect elements in design. Wider spaces separate elements from each other, and narrower spaces connect elements to reveal relationships between them. Now, in design, there are mainly two types of spaces: positive space and negative space. Positive space is the space that an object occupies. On the left-hand side picture, the positive space is the area that bottles take up. On the right-hand side picture, the positive space is shown as the black objects. So basically, positive space refers to the shapes of objects. It usually refers to anything that is considered the main focus of the page. Positive space is also known as black space, since this space is denoted by black color. And to talk about the negative space, it's just the opposite of positive space. Negative space is the space around an object. On the left-hand side picture, the negative space is the white area around the bottles. Negative space is the white space or the empty space. Basically, this is the background of your subject. Negative space avoids visual clutter and looks clean, which can help balance a composition and help focus the viewer on something specific in design. What creates positive and negative space is the arrangement and visual appearance of shapes. Negative space is also known as white space. It's basically the background of your subject. In a particular composition, the rest of the area where the positive space is not working is known as negative space. Now, in general photograph, we always have more negative space rather than positive space. But here is an example of more positive space and more negative space. Now, let's have a look on this example. This is a picture where positive space and negative space balance properly. Here, the positive space is a black area, what the subject occupies, and the rest of the portion which are white in color, that's our background, that is called the negative space. In this picture, the negative space is a lot more than positive space. There isn't a perfect balance of both. In this type of composition, negative space helps to highlight the positive space, because negative space is mostly covering the entire area. So we hardly can see the positive space, and this is a basic human psychology that we focus first, which is less in quantity. So here in this case, negative space is giving a value to this composition and highlighting the positive space. It helps to add an interest to this image. And if we look at the opposite example, here positive space is occupying more portion. So it's difficult for us to identify the subject because of the less negative space. Now, in a composition, the perfect balance of positive space and negative space is recommendable. None of these extreme spaces work well, so it's important to create a balance between both of the space so that it will add a visual interest to your image or your design layout. Now, there is another type of space called 3D space. It basically refers the height, width, and depth, or XYZ, to render the sense of 3D space on a flat 2D plane. The 3D space helps us to understand the perspective of a certain object, if that is on the 2D plane or 3D plane. In two-dimensional design, proximity, overlap, opacity, light and shadow, and perspective can be applied to shapes and create visual dynamics. These terms come under the principles of graphic design, and when these principles work with the visual elements of graphic design, we finally get an interest in our image.
Just like color, space is also considered as one of the most important elements of graphic design because this is a common graphic design element that works with the other graphic design elements and helps them to balance, whether you're working with shapes or typography or lines or anything. In graphic design, spacing is a crucial part to understand and apply properly. So I hope you got a decent idea about what space is and how significant it is in graphic design. Please continue the lesson with the next video.
So our last important graphic design element is called typography. This is one of the most commonly used graphic design element because type is one of the most direct way to communicate through visuals. For example, in a virtual conversation, we do not draw to make someone understand the message that we want to give them. Rather, we quickly type the message through words and send that to the user. This is the fastest and easiest way to convey your message to the user. So typography plays a vital role in design communication. So basically, typography is the style or the appearance of text or the art of working with the text. In this topic of typography, there is some confusion surrounding the difference between typefaces and fonts. A lot of people treat these two words as synonyms, but this isn't true. Let me clarify that in the simplest way possible. Typeface is the entire family of fonts of different weights. That means these two are not same but a part of each other. If typeface is the entire family, font is just a member of that family, so it comes under that category. Typeface determines the name of the font family, where font determines the structure and the style of that particular typeface. That means it comes under the typeface. The characteristics of every typeface can be broken down into what is known anatomy of type. The anatomy says a lot about that particular typeface. It determines the structure, the overall look and feel, and the style of that particular typeface. While writing a text paragraph, we often focus more on the words and their meaning. But the anatomy of typefaces plays even more significant role than the words. This is so obvious that words are so important to convey messages. But sometimes the anatomy of the typefaces can completely change the message that you want to give to the user. For example, have a look on this image. In both of the images, the same words have been placed in the same way, but because of the font style, we receive a different message for each. One gives us a positive message, while another one gives us a negative message in a horrible way. So font style matters a lot. The anatomy of the typeface can completely change the message that you want to give to the user. Be careful while choosing font style for certain messages. It needs to be relevant. So the typeface do not just communicate literally, but it also communicate visually. So it's really important to choose the correct font in order to send the right message. Now there are some common types of fonts that you need to know. These are serif font, sans serif font, and display font. These are the three basic kinds of typefaces used in almost everywhere in the text. Serif fonts have small decorative details on the end of some strokes that make up the letters and symbols. For example, some common serif typefaces are Times New Roman, Georgia, Palantino, and Garamond, and so on. Have a look on this image. Serif fonts have these extra details on the end of the stroke of the letter. Because of their classic look, serif font is often used on the headlines of any paragraph or on a cover page or newspaper magazine to highlight text. On the other hand, sans serif font doesn't have these details or flourishes. A nice example would be Arial font. These are so plain and simple, that's why the readability of these fonts are much higher than the serif font. This is also one of the most important reasons why sans serif font is always chosen to write the body parts of the paragraph or the most writing parts. The third one is called display font. This font have many different types. It can be script, black letters, or caps, or it can be extremely decorative or fancy. Display font doesn't have certain characteristics to identify. These are extremely decorative, and because of its decorative nature, display font is used mostly in those areas where we use small amount of text. These fonts can also be used in graphic heavy designs where creativity is the peak. Now since you know what are the common types of fonts used in graphic design, it's really important to understand the font pairing. In the beginning, it might be a little challenging, but don't be afraid to be innovative and show your creativity. Try different combination of fonts and observe which goes well with each other. Now there are some key points that you have to keep in mind while creating typography. Number 1, don't mix too many fonts in one design. First of all, it looks messy and it also decreases the readability of that particular text. So keep it simple, but try different combinations. Number 2, think about the mood of the fonts you choose. This is often a key difference between serif and sans serif fonts. Serif fonts can be very classic or formal, and sometimes you hear them referred to as elegant. Sans serif fonts are often described as modern, friendly, and minimal because they have stylish simplicity about them, without the decorative strokes. So it's also important to understand the mood of the fonts while font pairing. Number 3, consider which font suits the best. Whether you choose serif font or sans serif font varies according to the number of the factors, including the application you're using them on, the mood you want to convey, and the project itself or the content you're delivering. It also depends on the factors like color and the images used in the project. Yes, there is a difference between serif and sans serif font, but they can be both used in a wide number of projects and applications. So these are the few key points you need to keep in mind while creating typography. In case of font pairing, be aware of the fonts that have similar look and feel, because that doesn't go with each other. We have often heard this statement, opposite is attractive. These are some nice examples of font pairing. You can try using bold and large fonts with thin and small fonts, which are completely opposite to each other, but the font pairing looks attractive because of their contrasting nature. There shouldn't be more than 3 or 4 type of fonts. So limit yourself when it comes about choosing the number of fonts, but never limit yourself to show the innovative ideas and creativity in graphic design. In typography, space also plays a vital role. We have talked about the space in the previous lesson. Graphic design elements are completely connected with each other and cannot be represented individually. Have a look on this example of typography. Which example is easier to read? Everyone knows the answer, the right one, because it has adequate amount of space in the paragraph, and the fonts that has been chosen for this particular paragraph are plain and simple. That's why it's easier for us to read this paragraph. On the left paragraph, there is no spacing in between the text. That decreases the readability and accessibility, so it looks messy and difficult to read. I hope you got a decent idea about the typography and how significant this is in graphic design. So try to play with the fonts and get habituated with the font pairing trends. In this lesson, we're going to be talking about the most important design principle called visual hierarchy or hierarchy. So, what is this all about? Hierarchy is a visual technique that can help the viewer navigate your work. It's typically created by contrast between visual elements in a composition. Typically, visual elements with highest contrast are noticed first, and this is how the hierarchy works. For example, if we are looking at a design, the first thing we're going to notice in that design would be highlighted and bigger in size. The principle of hierarchy helps you to explain the design and helps the viewer what to look at first. Look at this example. First, you will read this, then you will read this, and then this, and you will probably see this last. It's a common human psychology that we need to understand while using visual hierarchy, that the first thing we're going to notice is the most highlighted thing and the most important thing in that design. So it's important to select certain graphic design elements in order to make your design stand out. Now, how to achieve visual hierarchy? Here's a nice example of visual hierarchy that will help you to choose what comes first. The primary heading is the most important thing in your design because it says 70% of your graphic design from an outlook. Before the viewer observe and analyze your design, he's going to actually look the heading. Like, what is this design all about? If he likes that, then only he will jump into the look inside your design and will properly analyze and observe it. So it's essential to give importance to the primary heading because the viewer are going to notice that first, or you want them to notice that first. So anyway, it's important. Then comes secondary heading. It's a little less important than the primary heading, so you can keep it underneath. So it's going to be the second thing that the viewer are going to notice. And then comes accordingly the tertiary heading, body text, small caption text. So you can take as examples of anything. Whether it's a paragraph or it's a poster, you will definitely notice that the visual hierarchy is playing an important role in that particular design. So basically what we got to know till now, hierarchy lets the reader know where to look first. Its main role is to keep your ideas organized so that viewers can always identify which category of information they are reading. It helps them to understand the design in the simplest way possible. Take a look on this picture. These are the examples of visual hierarchy in a visiting card. The first picture fails to create visual hierarchy. That's why the design is not pleasing and doesn't help you to identify what this is all about. When you're looking at this card, you need to understand why we are designing this card. It's a visiting card. So the most important thing in this design is the person's identity. There are two things that need to be highlighted. One, the person's name, and the second, the picture of that person. As we can see, the picture is fit in size, so we don't need to change that. But the size of the details and the size of the name of that person are equal. That's why it's difficult for us to identify her name in this design. But if you see the right hand side picture, the name is in caps and in bigger in size. It's directly giving you the message, even if you are seeing this design from a distance, that this is a visiting card and this is who the person is. That's why the design on the right successfully creates the visual hierarchy. Our job is to make things easier to understand. So make sure you're not adding too much complexity in your design. It doesn't mean that you always have to go for a minimalistic design. It can be complicated, it can be decorative, it can be so creative, but make sure that it's easy to understand, that the viewer don't get frustrated or get upset because of your design. In visual hierarchy, it's also important to choose the typography and the fonts carefully. Pay attention on your font pairing because it's really important. Do not use more than one decorative font in a particular design. Combine them with opposite fonts. That will look good. So visual hierarchy plays a significant role in graphic design because it determines your first focus point. So I hope you got the decent idea of what visual hierarchy is all about and how important this is. Please continue with the next lesson. In this section, I'm going to be talking about different types of graphic design, how it works, how you can create that, and the value of these designs in the market. The first one we have branding design or the formal design is one of the most important graphic design type that has high demand in the market. Graphic designs that is used in business is called formal designs. On the other hand, a business need a lot of designs and all that comes under brand design. Now to talk about the formal design, it has certain characteristics to maintain. Formal design shouldn't have too much colors in it. It shouldn't look too much decorative or creative. Formal designs are more about working with low saturated pastel colors, or better if you use black, white, or gray. These type of designs are often used in business documentation, where you need to maintain an overall formal look. Formal designs shouldn't contain decorative or display fonts. It needs to be plain and clear. Better to use the serif and sans serif. In formal designs, it is extremely important to keep in mind that the alignment should be correct. However, in any type of graphic design, alignment is important, but specifically for formal designs, alignment are the must. So you need to keep in mind that the font needs to be paired well and they are placed orderly, maintaining the alignment. Now, formal design and branding design are not two separate type of designs. Formal design is a section that comes under branding design. It's just a part of it. So typically branding design has every single graphic design that a company requires. Coming from logo to business card to poster to social media post, packaging, interface designs, and so on. So I have classified the branding designs into three parts. The first part has identity design. Logo is the mark that helps you to understand and identify a company or a business. So logo comes first and then the packaging and the mock-up designs based on logos. This part also includes business card design, t-shirt design, letterhead and wrapping designs. In the second part, I kept the marketing designs. It includes poster design, social media post design, banner design, flyer design, and every other graphic designs that will be used for marketing purpose and the advertisement of that certain business. Marketing designers' job role are the most available positions because every single company hires graphic designer for their marketing designs. So if you can create some good graphics, you can easily design the posters, social media posts, and flyers, banners, and everything. Though you will get everything in the tutorial section, so anyone who has a little graphic design knowledge can easily apply for the job position. It's a lot available. And in the third part, the difficult designs come in. It includes a website design, mobile application design, and every other interface designs. And it also includes short motion graphics and animation videos for maximum engagement. So when we put these three types of designs together, we call it branding design. So basically, it includes every single type of graphic design or even more than that. So when you're a graphic designer, it's important to choose your expertise area. What is that particular design that you can do really well? Focus on that and search jobs related to that field. For example, if you're good at poster design, you can apply for the marketing design positions. However, the designation of designers vary a lot. It depends on the certain company you're applying for. So I hope you got the decent idea about the formal design and branding design. Do let me know if you have any questions regarding this, and check out the various types of graphic designs. Those are in the next lessons. In this lesson, I'm going to be talking about minimalistic design. It's one of the most acceptable and desirable design forms and probably everywhere. So, what is minimalistic design? The word minimalistic comes from minimum, and we all know that minimum means less. In the simplest words, a minimalistic design is a design that only uses the most essential elements, including basic shapes and limited color patterns. Now, it's important to understand that when you're working on minimalistic design, your design should be simple, yet memorable, impactful, and powerful. What that basically means is it should fulfill the purpose of your design. So, what's the purpose of minimalistic design? The purpose is to make the content stand out and be the focal point. From a visual standpoint, minimalistic design is meant to be calming and to bring the mind down to the basics. Now, here is a nice example of a minimalistic design. It says humanism. Now, the word humanism comes from human. The purpose of this design is to show a human any way possible. So, we can attach human pictures, we can draw a full body of a human, we can add a lot of things in it. But since we are creating minimalistic design, it's important to know that we cannot add so many things in your design. We have to work with minimum graphic design elements like minimum number of colors, minimum number of shapes, minimum number of typography. But it should make sure that it fulfills the purpose. Like I said, the purpose of this design is to show a human. Now you need to think, how can I fulfill this purpose by using minimum number of graphic design elements? Here we have used only two shapes, a circle and a rectangle with modified corners, and we place them in such a way that conveys a message that this is a human. These two shapes are enough to make you understand that we are actually talking about human. These two shapes are making an icon, and we can easily understand that the circle is the head of a human and the rectangle is the body. This is how the elements are working to create minimalistic graphic design. Now, minimalistic design may look simple, but it's not too easy to create. Generating new ideas are not as easy as it looks like. A lot of decoration is much easier than to create a minimalistic design. Often heard this question, how to create minimalistic design. So here I have 8 rules to create great minimalistic design. Now in design, there is no rules as such that you necessarily need to follow. You can always show your creativity and innovative ideas. But I have set some rules or tips that makes this thing much easier. So let's get started. My first rule says, be simple. It's important to make clear that the key of minimalistic graphic design style is to keep things simple. That means we will avoid using too many graphic design elements. Just like I said before, it's about working with minimum number of graphic design elements to make your design simple but impactful. The second rule is function over visual. Minimalistic design focuses on the fact that every element of your composition needs to have a purpose, and if not, then it shouldn't be in your design. So it says the same thing, your design should be purposeful, otherwise there is no point of creating graphic design. The third rule is give content the spotlight. For minimalism, the visual hierarchy principles are very important to organize the information and track the viewer's eye in the direction we want, being the first thing they see, the focal point. So since we are working with minimal stuffs, it's important to use the hierarchy principle that will help you to highlight the thing that you want your viewer to notice first. For example, headlines or any picture which need to be highlighted in your design. Rule number 4. Be strict with proportions or grids. It's important to choose right proportions and take care of every detail. That's why it's so important to use grids in our design project to organize all the elements. It's just about placing your graphic design elements in such a way that it makes sense. If you don't make the proportion right and randomly place graphic design elements, your design will not be meaningful and it's not going to make any sense. So next, the fifth rule is select simple typefaces. Now this is really important. We will look for a readability font avoiding oversaturated fonts. It's very important to see big and bold fonts in minimalistic design, especially for headers. Now here comes the hierarchy principle again. You need to understand which is the most important line in your design. You need to make it stand out. You can make it bold, you can make it bigger, that people will notice that first. So rule number 6, Limit the use of color. The key factor is choosing the right color scheme is to limit your palette to two principal colors and in some cases one accent color. Now, I'm not saying that stick to one color when you're creating minimalistic design. It definitely can be more than one color, but make sure that you're not using too many different colors that will make this thing look much decorated, and we don't need that thing. We need to make it look minimalistic and simple. So use simple colors, nice shades that will help your design stand out. Now, seventh rule of minimalistic graphic design is negative space. Negative space is a key element of every minimalistic graphic design project, and adding more blank space on our design makes it easier to focus on the most important elements. As we already discussed about negative space before, I think it's much easier to understand that we are basically talking about adding more background in your image. It's definitely recommendable if you're using a lot of negative space in your minimalistic design. And the last but not the least is the most important rule among them all. Rule number 8, less is more. Keep cutting. We need to revise our design once it's finished and remove those elements which don't add any function to it. Keep this process until you can't remove any element. So it's basically saying that remove all the elements which is unnecessary, which doesn't make sense in your image, which seems extra in your design. So these are my 8 rules of how to create great minimalistic design. If you follow these rules, you will definitely be able to create great graphic designs. Now here are some examples of minimalistic design. Let's have a look on them. In this design, we are clearly getting a message that this is an ox, but only 3 shapes have been used in this. There is no detail of the face of this animal, but still we are able to understand that this is an ox. Next, this is also a beautiful example of minimalistic graphic design, working with minimal color and typography. It doesn't have much in it, but still looks aesthetic and adds more interest in this image because of the placement of the shapes and typography. Here are some great examples of minimalistic graphic design. I hope you got a decent idea of what minimalistic graphic design is and how you can create them so easily and so beautifully. Just follow the rules along with the video.